Content warning. This video will discuss physical and psychological abuse. Writing stories that deal with heavy themes like abuse is not anything to be taken lightly. When you write stories about harmful things like abuse, you need to understand you are crafting a narrative that reflects on these real-life situations. You need to make sure to handle these sorts of topics with care and respect. Or, you could write Transformers Prime Season 3 and the movie. You could do that too! Hey there everyone, I rewatched Transformers Prime recently and I have lots of thoughts, mostly good, some bad, and today we're going to talk about the show. In particular, we're going to talk about Starscream. Starscream is a victim of abuse. He's also a major antagonist in the show. He works under Megatron, who throughout the series physically and psychologically abuses him. In my opinion, the way they wrote Starscream as an abuse victim was harmful and bad. And in this video, I'm going to explain why I think this. Firstly, let's discuss what not to do when writing a character who is a victim of abuse. Firstly, don't sensationalize the abuse itself if you choose to depict it. Don't make it a spectacle for shock value. If you feel the need to show the abuse, have every scene be for a specific reason that moves the story forwards. Secondly, don't make your victims inactive and without agency. Whether they make good or bad choices, let them have an effect on where they are and where they are going. The last thing you want to do is have a character already being trampled by another to be trampled by the plot. In the same breath, don't include an abuse plotline if it's only to further push along a different character's arc, reducing the victim to a plot device. Third, don't depict the abused character as only weak, shameful, and helpless. Let them have moments to be strong, and don't let the abuse be the main trait of their existence. Fourth, don't victim blame, and don't take the side of the abuse. To summarize, don't write an abuse plotline at the expense of the victim being a character. The victim should be a fully rounded character just like everybody else, and if the abuse plotline is ending up cheapening them, you shouldn't be writing it. So that about sums all that up, and now it's time to get back to talking about Starscream. Firstly, let me summarize his character arc. In Season 1, Starscream is second in command of the Decepticons, but since Megatron is largely out of commission, he's essentially the leader most of the time. He makes plots to sabotage Megatron, who regularly and violently beats him, and at the end of the season, he leaves the Decepticons altogether. Woohoo! In Season 2, Starscream is on his own, which means he's essentially scavenging and starving for an entire season, since he doesn't have access to Energon anymore. He interacts with the Autobots, sometimes benefiting them and sometimes fighting them, and at the end of the season, after realizing he hasn't been able to make it on his own, he makes the choice to bribe the Decepticons with the Omega Keys to win back Megatron's favor. In Season 3, Starscream is a Decepticon again, and he is treated worse and worse by Megatron as the show goes on. Starscream, Megatron, and Shockwave kill the Predacons, and in the movie, the Predaking eventually gets revenge on Starscream. The last frame we see of him is him cowering before being attacked and left to an uncertain fate. I love Transformers Prime, particularly Starscream, and despite and because of this, I don't like the way his character plays out in Season 3 and the movie. After Starscream rejoins the Decepticons at the end of Season 2, the abuse he receives from Megatron gets way worse. Megatron physically beats Starscream quite often in Season 1, and as Season 3 progresses, this treatment is on full display and gets so much worse. And these abuse scenes are genuinely horrible and upsetting. Megatron physically dominates Starscream, who is much smaller and thinner, and the show spends a lot of time emphasizing his fear and screams as Megatron beats him. Alongside Starscream's abuse getting worse, he also gets significant Stockholm Syndrome in Season 3, which makes the whole situation 1,000 times ickier. While in Season 1, Starscream tried to usurp and fight back against Megatron, now he looks up to the person who is actively and regularly beating him half to death. But there's nothing wrong with depicting a toxic character dynamic. It's how the narrative frames it that matters. Starscream gets treated worse by Megatron while thinking better of him as the show goes on, and the only people we get to see this ugly situation through the eyes of are Starscream and Megatron, who both think this is fine in one way or another. We never get to see any other character acknowledge the abusive relationship. The Autobots are totally oblivious or totally uncaring that it's happening, and you can bet the other Decepticons aren't going to do anything about it. Even after Megatron leaves behind his goal of oppression at the end of the movie, he shows no regret of how he treated Starscream, the person who he had arguably made suffer the most. He just shouts at him and makes him flinch one last time, then abandons him. Leaves behind the person who he had physically and psychologically destroyed for thousands, if not millions of years. Although I don't expect Megatron to show sympathy for Starscream, since his redemption was just him retiring and leaving everyone else to clean up the mess he made. I have good and bad feelings on Megatron's ending, but I don't want to get too sidetracked. That can be another video for another day. What matters is, without Megatron acknowledging the horribleness of the situation and without the Autobots being aware of it, the only person who can acknowledge how toxic the situation was is Starscream. But he doesn't get a chance. His arc ends when the Predacons beat him up for revenge. Starscream is an abuse victim, and he is never given a chance to heal. No character, himself included, ever fully acknowledges how problematic the situation is. He is never given a chance to be powerful. Over and over again, he is forced to be weak and without agency. From the start of Season 3 to the end of the movie, his character is a slow trickle into suffering more and more, being beaten down again and again until he doesn't get back up. When watching the show, I was fine with the amount of frightening abuse they were depicting on screen because I thought they would have some amount of healing from it. But it just gets worse and worse until the show ends, and that's it. It just feels like abuse for the sake of abuse at this point. But the thing is, I'm not even opposed to Starscream having a bad ending. Let me explain. I think it makes sense after him being conniving and evil and power-hungry and cruel for his actions to catch up to him, and for him to be humbled in one way or another. The thing is, they depicted Starscream's fall to shame without ever giving him a moment of power. There's no climax in Season 3 where he takes control of his life again. There's no moment where he gets to be more than humiliated and shamed. Starscream is a victim, and he's an abuser as well. Or at least an oppressor, because his harm against others isn't nearly as personal as Megatron's harm against him is. The point is, Starscream treats everyone around him horribly. He is a perpetuator of the cycle of abuse, where, after being abused by Megatron and others, he started to replicate their cruelty in order to have power. The story needed to recognize him as both an abuser and a victim. It seemed to think these cancel out, that Starscream being beat by the Predacons in the end is the consequences of his abusive actions towards others coming back to haunt him. But just as a middle school bully doesn't deserve to go home and be bullied by their sibling, an abuser does not deserve to be abused by another person. No one deserves to be abused. Starscream being abused doesn't pay for his crimes, and he isn't being humbled for treating the Predacons badly, he's being tortured. As an abuser, Starscream deserved to see the consequences of his actions in some way, but as a victim, Starscream deserved any kind of moment of victory. All this to say, this isn't about whether or not Starscream deserved to be beat by the Predacons, although I maintain that we should have better mindsets about paying for our crimes than abusers deserve abuse. This is about the fact that he deserved to see a shred of honor before his fall as well. This is about the fact that as an abuse victim, he is not given a shred of dignity or an acknowledgement of his pain. His descent in Season 3 isn't even a character arc. There's no growth, no resolution, no rising or falling climax. Like I said before, it's just him suffering over and over until the series ends. Starscream is perhaps a good depiction of an abuser, a character who treats others poorly until it finally catches up to him. But he is a bad and problematic depiction of a victim, someone who never gets to be seen, even by himself. Now, let's go over the list of how not to write an abuse victim with Starscream in mind. Don't sensationalize the abuse. I would say the abuse in Transformers Prime is certainly shown to an unnecessary degree. Like I said before, the scenes begin to feel like abuse for the sake of abuse. The only possible benefit of including so many frightening scenes in the story could be to make Megatron look crueler and angrier. But that's just shock value, which could be achieved with a lot fewer of these abuse scenes and using other tactics to prop him up as a villain. After a while, the scenes get so unnecessarily and uncomfortably dragged out for no reason. Don't make your character inactive and without agency, and don't make the victim a plot device. Starscream definitely loses his agency as the story goes on. Third, don't depict the abused character as only weak, shameful, and helpless. Let them have moments to be strong, and don't let the abuse be the main trait of their existence. Whew. This one. Starscream is intentionally again and again made to look pathetic, shameful, weak, and helpless. Any character who wants to beat him up has no problem doing so, as he has virtually no ability to fight back. He is constantly made to look pathetic simply to make Megatron look strong, and any chance is taken to have him look as lame as possible. His best moment of strength is when he chooses to leave the Decepticons at the end of Season 1, a massive character moment in victory, but this is followed up by an entire season of him struggling and literally starving in the woods. In Season 3 in the movie, his main point is to simply be the pathetic lapdog who doesn't even want to stand up for himself anymore. Fourth, don't victim blame and don't take the side of the abuse. I wouldn't say the show takes Megatron's side, but it definitely takes the side that the abuse is what Starscream deserves. Starscream as a character is often approached with the mindset that he had it coming, which is a way to justify awful things happening to him. In reality, his bad actions are often a reaction to being abused, rather than his abuse being an answer to his bad actions. This doesn't mean he's not accountable for his actions, but it does mean that we can't keep using abuse as his punishment. It's also worth noting that Starscream is the only character expected to answer for his crimes. He's the only character to receive a bad ending in the show with no closure, and he's the only character who has to face the consequences of his actions. No one else, Autobot nor Decepticon, is expected to, and it feels kind of bad that the only person answering for his crimes is the abuse victim who has been seeing the consequences of his actions for 3 seasons. I think he's suffered enough. This isn't productive. This isn't rewarding. This isn't a character arc. It's just some guy being abused for a lot of episodes in a movie, and that's the end. Okay, I'm out of words now. Have a good day. Take care of yourself.